Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Andrew Laidley. EPOC co-chair Keith Duncan says Jamaica is in a better place now because of forward thinking, which is making the country more economically competitive. Here's more.
As many countries in the region are finding it difficult to keep their economies afloat, Jamaica is focusing on building out new areas which can contribute to growth. That's the plan which EPOC co-chair Keith Duncan says is working in the island's favor.
When we look at Barbados and their reliance on tourism as a major area, and Trinidad with oil and gas. Now, if you look at the three economies, Jamaica is the economy, even though we have debt levels that are higher than well, Barbados is coming close. Our debt to GDP levels are at 115% or 122% under the old EFF definition. And however, what we do have is a credible plan.
He says investors are gravitating to the plan for the country as they too start to realize the vision.
What investors buy into Jamaica is that we have a credible plan, we are fiscally responsible, and that we are delivering on our commitments. So therefore, that is one of the main reasons why investors would be warm to Jamaica.
However, Mr. Duncan also notes that Jamaica does not have all its eggs in one basket. He says the move to nurture and to grow several growth-enhancing industries is really starting to pay off.
In terms of Jamaica, in terms of Barbados and Trinidad, they would have some challenges at this point in time, and in terms of how are they to emerge from the fallout in their economies as a result of either the fall in oil prices or there's a heavy reliance on tourism in Barbados, and therefore it speaks to diversification in your economy. And Jamaica, with tourism, focused on the logistics, focused on the service sector, the business process outsourcing, agriculture, etc. Jamaica has the potential to have a greatly diversified economy.
And you're also possibly seeing that.
For BATV News, I'm Norda Francis Williams.
Meanwhile, EPOC co-chair Keith Duncan says finding money to fix the damage caused by the heavy rains last week should not be a problem. More in this report. $20 million. That's how much EPOC co-chair Keith Duncan says is put aside as contingency funds to reallocate in cases of disaster. He says after last week's rains, the government may consider drawing down on that money.
Well, hearing comments from the Prime Minister that there needs to be a reallocation of resources under the budget, so therefore there's going to have to be that thinking that's done. However, inside of the budget for this year, there is a 1% contingency reserve, 1% of GDP, which is approximately $20 billion. That would be a contingency reserve that's in place to ensure that in events of fallout in revenue expenditures and any kind of disasters, that there is some room in the budget for such situations.
However, Mr. Duncan is urging the government to access the contingency reserve wisely since the hurricane season is yet to begin.
But however, you have to really ensure that you manage that contingency reserve very prudently, because we're now moving into the hurricane season. So therefore, but however, we really have to look to deal with the infrastructure and the fallout, as it does impact productivity and production with the rains that have occurred. So we have to really move Jamaica back to normalcy.
He says if the government needs additional money to fix infrastructure and damaged roads, it can also consider making a drawdown from the IMF precautionary standby arrangement.
You can choose to draw down. So it's a decision that needs to be made. I guess you would want to ensure that you draw down if absolutely necessary, when absolutely necessary. So the situation would have to be so dire that you would say, okay, it's necessary for me to draw down on this standby agreement.
In the meantime, the Bank of Jamaica BOJ will be assessing the impact of the torrential flood rains which lashed the island last week to determine whether its inflation forecast needs to be revised. While indicating that the general target was not expected to change, Governor Brian Winter said the bank would be better able to determine whether the forecast range needs to be adjusted when the assessments are completed and the data is submitted for the 2017-18 financial year. Inflation is projected within the range of 4 to 6%. This outlook reflects a one-off price increase for fuel, electricity, and transportation associated with the recently announced tax measures. In addition, consumer prices rose by 0.3% in the month of April, bringing annual inflation to 4.8%. Mr. Winter also pointed out that inflation in April partly reflected the impact of taxes on the cost of transportation and alcoholic beverages. He noted that for the rest of the fiscal year, barring the unforeseen, the BOJ expects monthly inflation rates similar to what was seen in April. Meanwhile, the governor said the current account deficit for fiscal year 2016-17 is at 1.8% of gross domestic product GDP, which is below the 2% for the previous fiscal year. Mr. Winter noted that experts would have had to go back about 20 years in Jamaica's history to find another deficit this low. He was addressing the central bank's quarterly press briefing at the Hilton Rose Hall Hotel in Montego Bay on Friday. And the BOJ governor says a way should be found to facilitate the seamless transition of businesses operating informally to the formal economy. Mr. Winter, who was responding to questions about the BOJ's quarterly press briefing Friday in Montego Bay, said it was in the country's best interest if more businesses are regularized and the taxes can be collected. The BOJ governor added that it's important for persons to understand the benefits that comes with being regularized, noting that it's a major plus for sustainable economic growth. Mr. Winter also noted that the BOJ has been on a drive to promote a financial inclusion strategy which enables the underbanked to better undertake and grow business activities, save safely in the financial sector, manage risks, and build financial security. However, the BOJ governor stated that while much has been done over the last few years to make Jamaica more financially inclusive, many challenges remain. He argued that reliance on cash remains high, while the usage of accounts and electronic transaction instruments are low. This, he theorized, is in part due to their perceived high cost and inconvenience. He added that findings have shown that a large section of the population believe that the financial system will not serve their needs. He argued that a national financial inclusion strategy can serve as a powerful tool to coordinate, deepen, and accelerate national efforts to reach higher levels of financial inclusion. And stay with us. And still to come, should social media sites self-regulate or should the government get involved? More on that when we return. Welcome back. CEO of Digital Global Marketing, Kemal Brown, says it may be best for social media sites to continue to self-regulate, this in response to recent suggestions by the government to regulate social media based on the changes in technology and the new media landscape. He was a guest on the latest episode of BATV's On Point. Here's more.
During a meeting of the Upper House on April 12, Senator Ruel Reid argued that it was time to look into regulating the digital sphere as the media revolution is transforming the nature of journalism and its ethics. He said while the internet encourages new forms of journalism that are interactive and immediate, there are also greater risks of falsehood being presented as truth. However, CEO of Digital Global Marketing, Kemal Brown, says there's no need for the government to get involved as some social media platforms like Facebook already self-regulate in order to protect themselves from any legal implications.
Reality is, social media allows you, based on the algorithms, EdgeRank, which drives the back end of Facebook, based on the algorithms within these platforms, you literally get to see what you want to see. All right, so Facebook, when you like something, what you're telling Facebook is show me more. Show me more of this. When you like a friend's post, so it's curating your experience based on your actions. So it's actually, that's how Facebook retains its user base, which is almost at 2 billion, right?
So if you like the violent and the graphic stuff, that's going to
It's going to show you more. It's going to show you more of it. But the reality is Facebook also tries to regulate that content in and of itself in terms of regulating the platform because they do understand, that legal implications can arise.
He says while there is this safety measure by the platforms, the self-regulating is only to an extent.
However, things like fake accounts popping up, people speak to the fact that, anonymity is, and also anonymity is another right of freedom of speech. So there's a lot of nuances within any regulation that the government or whoever has to kind of speak to and kind of think about before they just,
In the meantime, Toucan Jamaica General Manager Devon Hunter says he is a big advocate of self-regulation.
One of the most interesting pieces of news, if you will, that has come out of Facebook in recent times, and it's something that I wouldn't have thought about on my own, is how they prevent you from advertising specific kinds of things to specific types of people. So you would think it's really cool to have an image of a baby and newborn and so on. And they're cutting back on the advertising in relation to that because of people who have suffered loss of a child. So the thinking of a platform who is getting thousands and millions of people engaging and providing information will always be more effective than legislators sitting down without lots of context.
For BATV News, I'm Leroy Hall.
And as more businesses utilize social media to promote their brands, both social media analysts argue that this form of marketing is an information gold mine. Anthony Morgan reports.
Platforms like Facebook and Instagram are now being used heavily by companies and marketing agencies for brand promotion. Kemal Brown says while it all comes down to content and the team using the platforms, digital media can provide marketing teams with deeper data than traditional platforms like television.
So we don't know how many people are watching Business Access unless you have a Nielsen box or domestic things, right? You just don't know. But on digital, you can not only know when they're watching, how long they watched for, when there was a spike in the second account in terms of so you know that this was the most interesting part of the video. So that deep data
it allows you to refine yourself.
There you go. It allows you to pivot, tweak, iterate until you get something that's truly valuable to your audience. And then you then win them with your content.
He says digital media also allows brands to target specific individuals with specific interests.
The reality is, what you have to understand is this thing allows perception control. Right? And if you're not in control of your brand, it comes down to branding. If you're not in control of your brand, you're letting the world define who you are versus you having a speaker box to say, here I am, this is what I stand for, this is who I am, this is the value that I can add to your life. Right? And that is what social media allows you to do. Convey packets of your personality to a world that wants to get to know you.
Meanwhile, General Manager of Toucan Jamaica, Devon Hunter, says digital media is changing the way how everything is done.
It is a millennial kind of experience, and oftentimes we think about millennials just in terms of age, and we ignore the fact that there's a cultural experience in being a millennial, and there is a cultural experience in terms of living in the time of the millennials, where the level of control and access that people want is something that has never been as significant in our history, and it is changing how you do everything, not just in terms of what we do in social media or anything like that, but how you run your business, how you treat staff, just every single aspect of it.
For BATV News, I'm Anthony Morgan.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the divestment of state assets, which will facilitate increased investments and yield greater levels of economic growth, is a good thing for Jamaica. The Prime Minister argued that divestment of assets is not a bad thing for Jamaicans if it is done correctly. He was speaking following a tour of expansion works being undertaken by the Kingston Free Zone Terminal Limited, KFTL, at Port Bustamante on Friday. He pointed out that approximately 200 additional Jamaicans have been employed by Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited. The expansion activities, valued at $456 million will include, among other things, structural developments to the berthing area to accommodate larger ships. KFTL is a subsidiary of the Global Terminal Operators CMA-CGM Group. The local company was established for the sole purpose of acting as a signatory to the Kingston Container Terminal Concession, KCT. The agreement gives KFTL a 30-year term concession with the right to finance, expand, operate, maintain, and transfer the KCT at the end of the concession period. Mr. Holness noted that the expansion of the facility is timely and places Jamaica in a better position to take advantage of the changes in logistics and shipping industries. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Holness is proposing that the regulatory arm of the government be strengthened so that it can divest itself of assets to the private sector. He added that significant acres of land exist around the port, which is now well placed to be developed for logistics, manufacturing, and other forms of operations. The Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation says it will be preparing a long-term management plan for the maintenance of the Ward Theatre in downtown Kingston. Mayor of Kingston, Senator Delroy Williams, told the JIS News that there are plans to put a management team in place. The Ward Theatre, a historical landmark situated on North Parade, Kingston, is one of two major Labor Day projects that will receive national attention tomorrow. The other project is the Central Police Station in downtown Kingston. The Municipal Corporation, in collaboration with the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the ministry responsible for organizing Workers' Week and Labor Day, to carry out maintenance work on the Ward Theatre. It is a part of the ongoing rehabilitation of the building. Mayor Delroy Williams said that some $40 million will be spent on renovation works at the theatre, with part of the funds provided by the Ward Theatre Foundation. He said that work on Labor Day will involve repairs to the changing rooms and 13 bathrooms at the facility. Activities will also include painting, plumbing, and the installation of electrical fittings. Mayor Williams said that workers on site have been receiving advice from the Jamaica National Heritage Trust in keeping with the renovation of a heritage site. The mayor said that he's hoping to have the theatre operational by August this year. The Ward Theatre, which was donated to the city of Kingston by Colonel C.J. Ward in 1912, was declared a national monument in January 2000. And stay with us, regional and international stories are next. Welcome back. It's time now for regional and international news. Venezuela's capital has seen more intense clashes as tens of thousands of anti-government protesters marked 50 days of their demonstrations. At least 46 people have died in clashes since the protests began almost 2 months ago. But Saturday witnessed one of the biggest turnouts in the 7 weeks of rallies. The protesters blame President Nicolas Maduro for the country's acute food and economic crisis. Al Jazeera's John Holman reports from the bordering Colombian city of Cúcuta.
The 50th day of protest in Venezuela finished in the same way as so many others, wreathed in a cloud of tear gas as the police and opposition clashed. Before that, one of the biggest marches this year had taken place. The opposition called it Somos Millones, or We Are Millions. Their main demand, as it has been for some time, for elections.
We want general elections and we want to end this disaster, this horrible crisis Venezuela is going through.
But if anything, the government is digging in further, with President Maduro extending his supposedly temporary emergency powers and sending more than 300 protesters to military tribunals accused of terrorism. He's long claimed the protests are part of a US-backed plot against him, a theme he got the chance to develop again after recent US sanctions against 8 Venezuelan judges.
In Venezuela, there's an honorable government, and here we stand. Stay away from our country, Donald Trump.
The government held its own march on Saturday. Food and social programs, along with loyalty to Maduro's predecessor Hugo Chavez, have helped keep supporters on side. But an increasing number of others are tired of the country's endemic crime, increasingly authoritarian government, and above all, chronic shortages.
I'm scared to go out into the street and not find food for my children, not find medicine. It frightens me, but I come out anyway, because I'm here for my children.
There's been waves of anti-government protests before, but observers say that this time round it seems both more widespread and also more intense. There's been a death almost for every day of the protests. And the pressure isn't just internal, it's also coming from organisations like the European Union and the United Nations that have begun to speak about Venezuela. And as long as the political and economic crisis continues, that internal and external pressure is not going to go away. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Cúcuta, Colombia.
And thousands have crossed a key bridge into neighboring Colombia to escape the crisis in search of better lives and opportunities. More in this report.
Dawn breaks over Colombia, Venezuela, and the Simón Bolívar border bridge that connects the two. It's filled with an ever-increasing torrent of people as the Venezuelan crisis deepens. That's turned the bridge into a unique ecosystem in which travelers and hustlers scramble to survive. For disillusioned ex-government official José, it's the start of a new, uncertain life. He comes only with what he can carry, leaving Venezuela for good.
I worked for President Chavez, and how I regret it and what we're living through now. We thought we could change things, but they fooled us.
For others, the bridge is a lifeline to the many basic goods they can't get at home. Leida's travelled 15 hours just to get nappies in Colombia for his coming baby. 74-year-old Alicia is looking for medicine for her diabetes. She's pushed by one of a small army of porters, just one of a range of jobs that sprung up in the bridge's informal economy. Shoe shiner Gustavo and one-woman coffee machines are constantly on the go. David buys gold jewelry from cash-strapped Venezuelans. Those with nothing else to sell their hair. 18-year-old Elvis is one of dozens of buyers. He says on a good day, up to 25 girls take up the offer.
I persuade the girls and get a commission of $3 for long hair, $1.50 for short hair.
Elvis's colleagues cut the hair off at makeshift salons just round the corner. The bridge is really a small world unto itself, the point at which desperation and opportunity meet. In the past, the people here say that was all about poorer Colombians heading to oil-rich Venezuela for work. But with Venezuela's continued problems, that flow has reversed. At dusk, the number of people slows to a trickle. But while Venezuela remains crippled by shortages, it's inevitable the next day it will begin again. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Simón Bolívar Bridge.
And Brazilians staged demonstrations calling for President Michel Temer to step down after the Supreme Court opened an investigation into allegations he endorsed the payment of hush money to a jailed former lawmaker. Unions, political parties, and activists called for Brazilians to come out on the streets and demand Temer step down. Protests in major cities, however, were smaller than expected. Al Jazeera's Lucia Newman reports from Sao Paulo.
In Brazil, they say that when Sao Paulo's emblematic Paulista Avenue is taken over by protesters, it's wise to listen. And the message here could not be more clear.
Out with President Temer, direct elections now. And as we say in Rio de Janeiro, Satan, get out!
Sai, Satanás!
The majority of these mainly left-wing demonstrators were already opponents of Michel Temer, whose role in engineering the impeachment of his predecessor, Dilma Rousseff, and his push for economic austerity reforms has made him hugely unpopular.
While this is an impressive turnout, even more significant are the number of people who are also calling for President Temer's resignation from the other side of the political divide, people who until recently supported the president. That includes Brazil's most powerful media empire, O Globo, which in this weekend's editorial called on the president to leave of his own accord or be forced out.
The rebellion against Temer is moving at lightning speed since a secretly recorded conversation of him allegedly attempting to obstruct a corruption investigation was made public last week. The Supreme Court will decide on Wednesday whether to accept the president's request to suspend an investigation against him, arguing the tapes were doctored. But in the court of public opinion, it seems Brazilians have already found him guilty.
Our young democracy is being aborted by a corrupt government and a corrupt media. That is why we say, Temer, get out.
Over the weekend, the Influential Lawyers Guild called for Temer's resignation. And congressional allies, the president's only power base, are now discussing whether to break with him. The first out the door was the Socialist Party, which over the weekend abandoned the government coalition, demanding Temer step down. If many more follow, Michel Temer, like his predecessor Dilma Rousseff, will find it difficult to survive. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo.
US-based Huntsman and Switzerland's Clariant are combining to create a chemical manufacturer with a market value of more than $14 billion after years of tentative mutual approaches. Laura Freichberg reports.
Proof perhaps that business can be mixed with pleasure. After 8 years of friendship, these two CEOs have merged their companies, US-based Huntsman Corp and the Swiss-based Clariant AG. The two will become one massive chemical manufacturer with a market value of more than $14 billion. That figure may seem impressive, but some say could be a sign of wider financial struggle.
An awful lot of M&A, not just within the chemical sector, but globally, is defensive in nature. If you look at the statements in and around most of this activity, it's generally framed in such a way that they can extract cost cuts from this combination of businesses. We are still in an environment where top-line growth remains extremely elusive and pricing power is also not there.
And none more so than in Europe. Its chemical industry has slowed, losing its market shares to rivals in Asia, where demand is growing faster. Likewise in North America, where energy is cheaper. Little surprise then that this merge will see the company headquartered in Switzerland, but its operational centre will be in the oil-rich US state of Texas.
Talking Stocks is after the break. Oh yes, who cares? I know who cares. Welcome back. Time now for Talking Stocks. 50 stocks traded today, of which 21 advanced, 20 declined, and 9 traded firm. The main JC index declined by 75 points. It closed at 236,529. The junior index also advanced by 29 points. It closed at 3,369 points. Over 3 million units traded, valued at more than $39 million on the Jamaican dollar market. And on the US dollar market, over 42,000 units traded, valued at over $11,000 US. JMMB Group, with over 526,000 units changing hands, accounted for 16% of the market volume. Epley was second with over 451,000 units trading. Cable and Wireless, with over 229,000 units, accounted for 9% of the market volume, crossing the floor. Epley was also the top advancer, up $1.90 to close at $12, followed by Consolidated Bakeries up 39 cents to close at $2.87, and Dolphin Cove up $1 to close at $22. The main decliners were 1834 Investments, losing 35 cents to close at $1.45, followed by KLE Group, down 28 cents to close at $2.35, and Proven Investments, down 2 cents to close at 27 cents. And that's all the news we have for this evening, but before we go, a recap of our top story. EPOC co-chair Keith Duncan says Jamaica is in a better place now economically because of forward thinking. Thanks for watching. For more content, visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Andrew Laidley. Pleasant viewing.